It's often said that Nahjul Balagha is a practical commentary of the Holy Quran. If you want an understanding of the practical implementations of the rulings of the Quran, then look towards the life of Ali ibn Abi Talib. And that is what has been highlighted today by Sheikh Muhammad Ali Ismail. Our final speaker for this session today is Professor Rodney Shakespeare. Rodney Shakespeare is a visiting professor of binary economics at Trisakti University in Jakarta, Indonesia. He is a Cambridge MA, a qualified UK barrister, a regular broadcaster on Press TV, IRIB, and Al Alam TV, as well as other TV channels. And the recipient of the Martin Luther King Kelso Award. Rodney's main website is www.binaryeconomics.net, and he is the co-founder of the Global Justice Movement and a member of the Christian Council for Monetary Justice. He is also the chair of the Committee Against Torture in Bahrain. His topic today is economic justice, zakah, and Imam Ali. Please welcome Professor Rodney Shakespeare with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Members of conference and the chair, who is the son of Shabir, who has disappeared. I don't know much about the chair, but I do know a few things about Shabir, yes, so we won't go into that. If we could move the first slide. The Nahjul Balagha is indeed a treasure trove. That's not my metaphor. But when I came to it, I did find it full of riches. And I was particularly impressed by the sense of humanity and justice. But it's not enough to have such sense. In life, you have to deal and implement practicalities which give a real physical presence to humanity and justice. And that does mean that we have to touch on things like politics and economics. Now, there's no need to be scared by economics. It is true that mainstream economics today is a corrupt thing, it is a failing thing, and it is the main intellectual weapon by which a tiny financial elite have got a grasp on society and are moving it towards a destruction. But most people are scared of challenging mainstream economics. But I can tell you that there are 53 false assumptions right at the heart of mainstream economics. It took me 45 years to find them, and only last week I was at a conference and another 2 turned up. It may be that there are many and many more. But please understand that today's economics is fundamentally flawed at the most basic and underlying levels. But if we turn to Imam Ali, one finds the simple, straightforward economics. He, for example, well understood that at the bottom of a society, there has, particularly in his day, there has to be a well-developed agriculture. That the development of the agriculture, that's just to say of the physical realities, is in fact, hi there, Reza, and I know some things about you as well, we won't go into that. It comes prior to almost any issue of governance, because without that development, then nothing in real terms can take place in society. Indeed, Imam Ali said, whoever demands tax without developing the land ruins the country and destroys the people. Okay, now we go to Islam. And as you all know better than I, it has pillars. There is Allah at the center of things, and that is expressing a oneness and interconnection between things. And mainstream economics, one of its 53 assumptions, is that economics can be separated from other studies and is almost a thing which has an independent mathematical existence. That is the complete and absolute nonsense. Number one in Islam then is, and in Christianity, is the oneness, pervasiveness of God. The concept is really tawheed in Islam. We then know of Salah. There is a Ramadan. I do just say here that I think everybody who is not a Muslim secretly takes their hat off to Muslims for the fact that they do a month's fasting. And to the younger people who come to fasting early on in their lives, I really take my hat off to them because it can be quite stressful. There is the Hajj. There is the need for jihad, to strive to perfect the soul, and there is zakah or kahums. Now, Imam Ali identified zakah as not just a charity, but as a sacrament. In other words, integral to the whole of the religion. But zakah, a thing at its time thoroughly necessary, is charity. Now, you needn't think there's no charity in this country. We've had charitable law for at least 400 years, from at least the time of Elizabeth I, and in practice long before that. And during the great period of empire in this country, countless funds were put into charity. But no one can declare today that they really think that charity answers all the needs of the poor. It just doesn't. And if we can just move on there. And we move on now to the next one. Imam Ali put his finger on the issue. He was asked which is superior, generosity, by which I think we mean charity, or justice. And he was unequivocal. He just said the superior one is justice. And Dr. Talib, you and I had a conversation not so long ago, and we were discussing some of the quotations on the governed and the governors. And it's quite clear that Imam Ali had a cohesive sense of humanity and justice going to the whole of all the human beings in society. And yes, and that is then exemplified in that question or the answer, what is superior, generosity or justice? You see, justice gives a permanent structural solution to the problems, whereas charity or zakah, as it's conceived, it can be more structural, we'll come on to that in a minute, is in fact something which at best can only really be conceived as being temporary or an alleviation. Next one, please. Thank you very much. In Islam, as you all know, there are 7 heinous sins. Heinous means of the utmost gravity. And if you go down the list, you find that the last one, which I put up there on the slide, is riba. In the Quran, if we have the next slide, please, we are told that all you who have believed, do not consume usury doubled and multiplied. And there are the strongest imprecations against usury. They are in Islam, and they are also in Christianity, and even in the Jewish faith. You can find it right the way through. Unfortunately, all societies have become corrupted. And I want to just make this distinction, that if you are borrowing existing money, then those who have existing money can put a screw on you. And they, in fact, can impose interest. They can hide it, as in Islamic banking, where they use different legal contracts. But the effect is to take as much away from the borrower as in conventional finance and economics. But where existing money is being used, I say, well, all right, there's not much you can do about it. That's the price that you pay for those who've got something that you want. But in today's society, and this has been the case for over 300 years, the money that you are lent is not the bank's. It is in fact something which the society allows the banks to create. And they create it out of nothing. And if we can go on to the next slide there. And you can see that I'm saying there, money is created out of nothing. And therefore, there is no time value in money. One of the biggest lies underlying modern mainstream economics is that there is a time value to money. There is if it's existing money. But if it's created out of nothing, there is no time value. It can be created just like that. What does matter is who creates it, on what terms, and to whom it is lent, for what underlying purpose. And of course, in our economy today, the money is created and lent for anything except the real economy, and if I may say so, except the spreading of the real economy, because nobody in economics ever seems to understand that. It's not enough to lend to narrow groups who may abuse the privilege they have. We should always have the Imam Ali sense of justice and say we wish to lend in such ways as that we spread the productive economy and therefore the ability to consume to everybody in the society. And if you don't do that, you're not going to have a true free market economy, and you're not going to have just outcomes, and you're not going to have an economy which is truly in balance. And it's because you don't have these things that you're starting to see the huge build-ups of what's going to be a colossal crash in our economy. Very briefly, sir, the evils caused by interest are immense. It doubles, trebles, quadruples the cost of a public capital project like a bridge or a road or a hospital or a sewage works. It is a drag on the operations of the free market economy. 80% of the population lose by interest, 10% are in balance and 10% gain. In international terms, interest is an absolute outrage. When you lend to another government, almost certainly you've got high collateral. You can guarantee its repayment. But in fact, you lend, say, to Nigeria, and Nigeria was lent about 20 years ago, and it's already paid 5, 6, 7, 8 times the original sum, and will go on doing that forevermore. Alas, in this world today, you are told that you have to borrow from abroad at interest. Egypt is being told this at this very moment. Complete and absolute lie. You can borrow from your own national banks at no interest. Therefore, putting this all together, and we've only got just a few minutes, I want to say to you that firstly, be brave and remember that economics is quite simple. Secondly, remember it's been corrupted and there are at least 53 false assumptions. And by the way, if you turn them round and do the opposite, you'll find a new economics, and a very one which will deeply satisfy you. And if anybody wants to know afterwards, I'll tell them where it can be found. But the secret to it, this new economics, which is an Islamic economics, because firstly, it's concerned with the real economy. Secondly, it has no interest. And thirdly, it really implements justice as Imam Ali would have wished. And if we can turn now to that last slide. Now, you may not be able to see, but right at the top, it proposes something which is not new. All the great economists have understood it. It is simply that you stop the banks creating money. You say to them, if you want to lend your own money, please do so. Everybody thinks you lend your own money. Carry on. Lend it on what terms you wish. And if you wish to throw it away, you just throw it away and you can go bankrupt. We don't mind. Secondly, you may lend the deposits of your customers with permission. Sometimes they only want in the banks the security of having their money secure. On the other hand, they may wish to have income coming in which case there can be the terms of this account or that account. Now that's what you actually think happens at the moment. But the truth is the banks create money. They have abrogated a power which is society's. And what this then says, yes, control the ability of the banks to create new money, they have abused it. Open up a new power. And that power can be on the left-hand side, it's the National Bank. In the centre is, I think it's a public bank, and on the right-hand side is zakah. Because you see, there are huge funds in Islam, and they are there and should be used, not just for the alleviation of charity, because in the long run, that solves nothing. It means there's more demand for zakah. But the zakah funds can be used to restructure in the way which is proposed here. The money then comes out and goes to a banking institution, because that is where the knowledge is and that's where the administration is done. And such institutions, called banks, must be allowed to charge an administration cost. Nobody is suggesting that there should not be an administration cost. But then it is then lent in the following ways. On the left-hand side, you can see microcredit. Now in India, every half an hour, a farmer who has the collateral of his land commits suicide, either by swallowing herbicide, and if they don't commit, which is a very painful death, and if they don't commit suicide, they sell one of their kidneys. They are desperate. That's every half an hour. Interest rates in the rural sticks are between 100 and 200, even over 200%. The commercial lenders have got in on the act and saying, oh, aren't the peasants absolutely wonderful? They can be guaranteed to repay. And indeed, the repayment is quite extraordinary. In microcredit now, they're getting 98% repayment. That's quite extraordinary. But the commercial lenders have battened onto it. IIRD is one of the big NGOs that I know about, and the Grameen Bank, they can lend at 34%. Because you see, 17% is the cost of their very, very expensive administration, and the fact that they train those to whom they lend. They identify, they train, and they do certain things in a certain way. So you can never get lower than 17%. But with an interest-free supply, you're at 17 and not at 50 or 60 or 100 or 150. I've discussed this with people in the Bangladesh National Bank, and they do not want to know. Alas, they are as corrupt as all the other central banks, and they usually have been educated in Western universities. The next thing next to it, I'm trying to move chair, time is moving, I think is public capital. Well, every day throughout this world, 25,000 people die from the effects of dirty water. Sewage works and water works, but you do not have these things because by the time they're built, and with compound interest, they're virtually unrepayable. I mean, the Humber Bridge was built, it's virtually unrepayable, right? Long ago. We could have, I go on to the next thing, shall we say clean electricity. When the present government came into power, they were proposing to implement the Severn barrage scheme. The River Severn is the river coming in on the west side of this country, okay? And that would generate 10% of our electricity cleanly forever. But if you do it by borrowing money at interest from the banking system, which is how it's done at the moment, long before you have built the barrage or the lagoons, however you do it, it has become totally unrepayable. If you do that with interest-free money from the Bank of England, then you just repay the cost of the thing. Now, the present government cancelled the project. You know, there's no greenery here. They just simply, they're in the grip of the existing paradigm, the existing system. But all they had to do was to borrow the money from the Bank of England. We're not part of the euro, we can do that. But the grip of corruption is there, we must always pay interest. It is not true. Why should you pay money, interest, to your own money supply? It's because you've allowed the money supply, the new money supply, to be controlled by the banks. For the purpose of the existing paradigm and not the new one, to be as it should be, It should in fact be using interest-free money, which gets the implementation out much, much quicker. And because it's so quick and so powerful a mechanism, you can actually ensure that anybody in a population, including a tiny baby, can have an independent income. It takes time to achieve that, but that can be done. You can ensure that a baby has enough income from capital ownership, held on trust by the parents, for its warmth, its food, its nappies, or whatever. Homes, you borrow 100,000 today, you will repay 300,000. But the administration cost is only 10,000. And as long as that you're only borrowing 80% of a genuine valuation, and that there are criminal penalties for false declarations of interest and false valuations, because all that was behind the great financial build-up and crash which has happened, there's no reason why you should not have interest-free loans for your house. And that's private housing, and you can do the same in public housing. I used to be a councillor, perhaps not in Peterborough, but on the council where I used to be, it was 65% of the housing account went on interest. Went on interest. The memory of it chokes me. Small farms and businesses should have interest-free loans. They've got collateral. And since the object of all this is to ensure that more the productive capacity is spread, then this mechanism says small farms and businesses should have interest-free loans. Student loans. I was stopped by Professor Richard Werner, of whom you may know, at Southampton on Wednesday, because I just said, oh, look, why shouldn't we have interest-free loans? And he just turned around and said to me, oh, why should they be loans at all? To which I said, I have benefited from what is essentially totally free higher education, and I would like others to benefit as well. But I'm just seeing at the moment, given the expansion of higher education, that may not be politically possible. But interest-free loans for students are perfectly possible, and in this country we have now developed a very efficient administration system. It's called the taxation system, by which the authorities can in fact ensure that those loans are repaid. Now I think I've covered them all there. Yes, okay, so well, thank you very much. Imam Ali had a strong sense of humanity and justice. He understood economics. Number one is you get the agriculture working, because without it, you've had it. If he was alive today, the combination of his humanity and justice, his sense of responsibility towards those who are governed, combined with this extraordinary thing which today's money is created totally out of nothing. 95, 97 of the money supply in all countries today is created by the banks. The rest is just done by the government. So I'm not really saying anything new. What I am saying is that you've got to actually address who lends the money to whom, on what purposes, and with what overall aim, including the unity of society and the understanding that economics should not be something separate. It should be part of the whole of society, including in other countries, and part of our relationship with God. Thank you, sir. I hope I didn't go over time.